But it's wonderful to be here, and it's certainly an honor to be up here in front of a bunch of friends and new faces and things like that. I can always tell when there's a lot of black sheep and a Sandre of bikers combined in an area, because all the handicap places were taken when I got here. Okay? There wasn't a blue sign. Every car out there has a blue sign on it. Okay? That ought to tell you about the professionalism we share as motorcycle riders. You know, if someone would have told me a year ago or a year and a half ago when I started coming to these breakfasts, bro, you're going to get called upon to stand up in front of, I don't know, 40 or 50 people, some friends, some people that don't even know you, I would have probably kept going. I would have probably went to another breakfast. I would have probably sat on the other side. I had no idea that this is the journey that God takes people on. But speaking to you today certainly takes me out of my comfort zone. So when I'm done speaking this morning, if my story sounds like a bunch of mismatch to you, that's because my life was a bunch of mismatch. A lot of things happened, good, some bad. So when they asked me to speak here, I got out my device, like most people in my age group do, and started reviewing sermons that I had heard over the last few years. Sermons that inspired me, people that had inspired me. And I tried to think to myself, I need to put something together, like Greg says, to compare myself to somebody else. I even went as far as to go on YouTube and watch some videos of some people that I admire speaking. Pastors that walk around a stage and have a Bible and a book in their hand like this here, and they're going like this, and I mean, they're just swaying the crowd just by taking this book and moving it up and down. I thought, I'll speak on the book of Job because to me, and I'm not a theological scholar, in the book of Job, this guy was confused, thinking he was doing everything right, and how wrong he was. Last week, some weather-torn cowboy got up in front of this group here, and he said he went to God before he even began to do ministry work, and asked, "What do you want? What do you want?" It worked for him, so I tried it this week. Well, as God would have it, out goes the book of Job. Out goes the video. Put on your no man shirt, and God spoke to me. Now, when God speaks to me, I don't hear audio voices. I don't know about you, but I don't, okay? But I have visions. I can look in at something, I can focus in and hone in on something, and I know that that's what I'm supposed to be doing. If you come to a Black Sheep breakfast, when that happens on your phone, you get fined. Just letting you know, okay?
First one's free.
That's right, the first one's free. So yesterday I was listening to some music, and I quite honestly, I had some ideas what I wanted to share with you. Obviously, some things about how I was saved and when my life was transformed when I was saved. But God spoke to me and said, "Bro, tell them about bro."
Amen. That's right.
Tell them about how last Sunday I called you to a family where there was a failed suicide attempt. Tell them. Tell them that. Tell them about the morning you woke up after a morphine bender with a loaded 9mm in your hand. Tell them. Tell them about how much you love the waitress, Rena. Okay. I had to throw that out there because it cut a little bit of the pressure off. Okay. Tell them the type of father and husband you were when you were an alcoholic. Tell them. Tell them about the man at the Harley Davidson dealership that you ministered to standing next to the guy in the urinal that was dying of cancer. Tell them that. But don't forget to tell them about us. I'll tell you why it took me so long to step up here. I was afraid. Some people won't admit that. I was afraid. A man stood up here and spoke here a few months ago and said, the reason that people don't get up here and do what I'm doing right here today is they're afraid of being rejected by their own people. You're afraid that you're not going to be able to get up there and talk like Greg Laurie, Marty Edwards, Dave Rom, Nick Newman. Who? Ron and Jill. Okay? You're afraid that you're not going to be able to do those things. And you're afraid of the fear of not having the ability to step out in faith to do something. That's a huge thing. So let me begin. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Have you ever thought what your life would look like if God made a movie? Stop and think. I look around this room, I could probably see some movie. I could probably see someone like Dylan over there, The Little Rascals. Okay? Maybe Ron Walker. I don't know, All in the Family. I don't know. Ozzie and Harriet. Okay? The Munsters. Okay? I'd have to believe if God was going to make a movie about me, probably midlife, it would look something like Scarface and probably end like The Exorcist, where the demons were driven out and somebody was brought to a different place in life. Remember, and you know I'm going to probably shoot a few lines from Johnny Roulette. Johnny last week told us, just remember this. Darkness is ignorance, and light is knowledge. And if we remain ignorant, you're going to get punched right in the gut. God bless you, Johnny Roulette. Okay? Do you know the difference between faith and knowledge? You see, faith begins where facts end. I was going to use a different analogy, but I'm going to use a motorcycle analogy. If you walked out here and seen this motorcycle sitting right outside the door, you would believe that the man that rode that motorcycle here believes that motorcycle is going to get him here. But if you personally had ridden that motorcycle, you would have the knowledge that you've got to pull in the clutch, you've got to turn the throttle, you've got to hang on when the front end pops up, you've got to hit the brakes at yellow lights. You would have a knowledge of that. And having knowledge is a comforting thing because knowledge results in faith. And faith is where facts begin here. That Jesus Christ will take you to a different place. And all you got to do is ask. And accept. The best news is you don't have to die in life to enjoy a little bit of heaven. Would you join me in an attitude of prayer? Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Silence is peace. Let me declare the dark side has no place here. Mr. Satan, you ain't welcome here. Father God, as your humble servant, I am ready. I'm ready to step outside of my comfort zone and step out in faith. Dear God, I ask that the ears that hear understand why I was selected to speak here today. I ask that you minister to our spirits. If there is any doubt, release confidence to work through it. If even one tired or exhausted person is here, I ask that you give them understanding, guidance, and strength. If there is fear, give us your courage. Bless each man here today, Lord. Raise up and lift up leaders and friends to support and encourage one another. I ask these in your holy name. Amen. Before I dive off into a little bit about the story about my life, just stop and consider, watch your thoughts in life because they become words. Watch your words as they become your actions. Watch your actions as they become habits. Watch your habits as they become character. And above all, watch your character because it becomes your destiny. I was born into a loving Catholic household in 1952. Okay? That's when I was born into this life, okay? But I was actually born about 7 years ago. I actually lived a rather privileged life. My dad worked a few jobs to keep me and my sisters in Catholic school. We had the regular trips to Disneyland, ski trips to Tahoe, you know, the stuff that normal kids have. Not. My parents seemed to fight a lot over kind of ridiculous things or whatever, what most parents fight over, money, okay, things, stuff, tangible items. But one of the things that breaks my heart when I think of my childhood is I only realized this as I walked through Celebrate Recovery, that I was exposed to a lot of infidelity, hidden infidelity inside of my parents' relationship. Could have played a part in why I ended up where I was in life. Maybe not the whole thing. I remember the infidelity, and I remember wild parties. One of the wildest parties I've ever seen that my parents had was my first communion. My first communion turned into a drunken brawl where I watched my mother fall over into a group of men at my communion. That's just how things were then. I accepted that, but I never really talked or shared too much about that kind of stuff. I just plugged along. And then I turned 12. Suddenly I was 12 years old. Things that are embedded in my mind when I was 12 years old, I remember the night I turned on the Ed Sullivan Show, and here they are, the Beatles. The Beatles on black and white television. It was on. Life was on for me. I was ready to go. I could see myself at the Ed Sullivan Show cheering on these four guys. But the first thing I had to do in life was sever myself from what I knew. The first thing I had to do in life was get expelled from Catholic school. Not suspended, expelled. My parents had the pleasure of going down and meeting with the nun. And they told them, Mrs. Newman, Mr. Newman, your son is not welcome here any longer. He can't be managed in this type of a setting. Oh, it was on. I got expelled. Me and a young man named Thomas Torme got expelled. He didn't. That's not the guy you're thinking of, okay? Me and this guy named Thomas Torme broke into the office and set the alarms. There was a master board in there. Now, mind you, this was in the early 60s. There was a board in there where the master alarm would ring for the classes to be dismissed at an exact time. So at 2:15, the alarm was supposed to sound for school to be dismissed, and everybody would run out onto Foster Road in Downey, and everybody would be picked up in a car. Well, me and Thomas Torme said it was time to get out of school early that day. We set the alarm for 1:15. And the bell rang, and everybody poured out onto Foster Road, and there was nobody there to pick them up. There were students running everywhere. And me and Thomas Torme were high-fiving one another. We was the star of the show. I got expelled, not suspended. Get out. Leave. Don't come back. Without a school to go to, my parents says, Georgie, that's my name, George. Georgie, we're going to send you to St. John Bosco High School, but you got to take an entrance exam. Now, I was bright. I wasn't like the sharpest tack in the box, but you know what? I wasn't a fumbling idiot. So I thought. So I go to take the entrance exam, and I deliberately answered every question wrong. Every question that I knew the answer to, I deliberately marked wrong, and the ones that I guessed, I took the worst guess. About 3 weeks later, they called up my parents and they said, Mr. and Mrs. Newman, we need to have a conference with you and Georgie. Okay, bring him in here. And I said, oh man, they're going to accept me into this Catholic school. I don't want to go there. They said to my parents, there's something wrong with your son. You need to take him and get him some mental health counseling. Needless to say, I ended up going to a public junior high school. I was free at last. No more nuns, no more structure, no more Catholic masses, no more detentions, no more nothing. Man, I was free. One of the first things I got suspended, not expelled, suspended from junior high school was, I don't know, some of you can remember there was a store chain called White Front Stores. They were one of the stores that had gas stations connected to them. And here's this guy on top of this 40-foot tanker just with a hose plugged into the ground. Back in those days, they didn't have vapor recovery systems. A guy would be dumping the fuel down into the tank and you'd see a Mirage 8 feet wide and 100 feet long. Fumes in the air. Thomas Torme goes by and drops a few F-bombs on the driver. Driver comes down, starts after him, and I walk from behind the building with a book of matches and a match drawn like this and says, you take one more step and I'll blow you to hell. Man, I was in control. And people saw me with a match ready to blow the place up. And people started scattering, running everywhere. Please, please don't do that. Don't do that. Me and Thomas Torme high-fived each other and laughed. Went on to school. Cops came, hooked us up, cuffs, took us away. By that time, the Beatles were in full swing. I mean, that music was just pumping out. And my parents were really livid with me, and I became quite unmanageable, and I actually loved it. I loved being unmanageable. But I had the answer to all my problems. I'll start smoking weed. That's the answer. I started smoking weed, and man, it was good. Beatle music started sounding real good then. Everything was rolling my way. Whenever I'd get in trouble, I would yearn for the times when I would be suspended from junior high school. My parents would go to work, and I could sit around and smoke weed all day. Me and Thomas Torme. God bless you. I don't know where he's at. I've tried to find him on Facebook. But like the infomercial says, but wait, there's more. The weed got even better if you would chase it with a couple jiggers of vodka. Man, cannabis and alcohol. What a combo. What a life. What a feeling. And the Beatle music got better. It didn't take long to figure out that if you were mixing weed with vodka, you could do it for days on end if you took amphetamines. So we started popping amphetamines. And if my parents thought I was unmanageable before all of this, imagine what was going on in their minds. I was on my way. I was on my way. And I still remember the day that Ed Sullivan brought those 4 people out on the stage. I'm not going to blame all my issues on the Beatles, okay? I am going to blame some of the things that I'm up here talking to you about on Johnny Roulette, though. But the more amphetamines I took, I found it was hard to fall asleep, but there was no problem there. I had another answer for that. Take some Seconal. They were called Reds, fender benders. We would buy them in Weber bread bags full by the thousands. By the thousands. I had a 1964 lowrider Chevy, not have a straight fender on that car. Every corner was, it was a beautiful car, and every corner was banged up. Somehow I managed to graduate from high school, but man, I was caught up in an ugly whirlwind of drugs, alcohol, and by this time, sex was on the scene. And it was free love back then, you know. Everybody, it was just a free-for-all. Unfortunately, I think back on those times, I think that's why we're in the mess that we're in today. But as I'm sure you know, I had another answer. I clinged around and looked for another excuse for something else to do in life, and I began to take LSD. I don't know about you guys, but LSD is a wild drug. You talk about hallucinations and things like that, it's all there. So now I'm mixing weed with alcohol, amphetamines to get up, Seconal to go down, and to calm my mood and keep a vision, I was dropping LSD. I spent about the next 15 years on and off of LSD, but continued to use drugs and drink a lot. I began to try cocaine because that's what my friends told me it was okay to do that kind of stuff with mixing it with all this other stuff. I even managed to get arrested a few times. Well, bro, what did you do for a living? I was a heavy equipment truck mechanic, earth movers and things like that. I made bank. I made a lot of money, a lot of money. I had a 6-figure income when I was 20 years old. I was rolling. 3 drag boats, a couple of show cars, choppers. Had a 38-foot offshore speedboat. Home. I had a nicer home than my parents were living in. But I do remember that period of time. That was about the time period I grew to hate myself. I was beginning to see things from a different perspective. And then on April 8th, 1980, game changer. Game changer. Here comes Nick. I remember the day he was born in the hospital. My wife and I had gone through some Lamaze classes, and in those Lamaze classes, they teach you how to be involved in an actual live childbirth. Push, breathe, all this other stuff. And when Nick was delivered, silence fell over the entire room of people. They knew. And when he came out, I suspected. I just suspected it. I yelled out, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" "Oh, everything's fine. Everything's fine." They grabbed him and rushed him. I said, "Is that the regular procedure? Taking him over there?" "Oh, yeah, he's going to be bathed." And finally, he started, crying a little bit, but he was slow to respond. So I remember the doctor examining the back of his neck. And I remember one of the first things he did was pulled his hand out like this to look to see if there was one line across his hand right here. If you look at yours, there's 2 lines on the palm of your hand. The doctor says, "Your son only has 1 crease in the palm of his hand." Dude, I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. What does that mean? He has an extra flap of skin on the back of his neck. So what? His eyes are a little slanted. He doesn't have a bridge on his nose. And he said, "I suspect your son might have Down syndrome. We don't know for sure. We're going to run some tests." Well, needless to say, it was true. First and only child born with Down syndrome. In the hospital, they said, there's an insandre, a waiting line of people that would love to care for your son. Well, who are they? They're foster parents. They're adoptive parents. You don't have to take your son home. They said, if you take him home, and try it and it doesn't work out, we have another agency that will intervene and help you get through all this. Well, what does that mean? You can place him in a group home. My dad and mother, the very people that I broke their heart, no, that ain't going to happen. Take him home. So I went into the hospital and I explained to Karen what had happened. And I said, I don't think we should take him home. I think we should try one of those other options. She wouldn't have no part of it.
Amen. That's right. Amen.
So we took him home. Within minutes, he's home. That's it. I mean, something takes place. Most of you are parents, and those of you who aren't will get to experience this. Once that bonding takes place, there's no turning back. At 18 days old, we had Nick involved in. What about him?
Showcase.
Oh, we're going to talk about the showcase and how Marty and Rowan helped you?
Yes.
Okay, I'll get to that in a little bit, okay? I'm still when you were a baby. I'm still talking about when you were a baby. From 0 to 6 months, at 18 days of age, Nick was involved in an early stimulation program and got plugged right in. He attended a school at the Long Beach Association for Retarded Citizens. I see the hog members riding around with ARC on their thing. That's an associate, apprentice road captain. ARC means something else to me. Okay. Just saying. Okay. So from 0 to 6 months, Nick was right on target. He was developing just like a regular child should be. I mean, he was doing everything that a 0 to 6 month child should do, including going for regular checkups to the doctors and receiving immunization shots. And on the third immunization shot, about 1 in 70,000 people, 1 in 70,000 people have an adverse reaction. Results in severe brain damage, results in sometimes death. So he had the third shot, and that night he came home and began to have seizures. The seizures increased from a few a day to dozens a day. They increased from dozens a day to 50 a day. They increased from 50 a day to several hundred a day. And that's what we were seeing. People have a tendency to seize and go into seizures while they're sleeping. It's a common time. We took Nick to see some of the best doctors that we could. But here's what I remember most. Doctors told me he cannot be cured from what he has. And I would not accept that as an answer. I eventually found a neurologist that treated him with the proper medication. But let me tell you the story that will blow your mind. By that time, I was so unplugged from God, I had no idea. I was unplugged. They gave him counter steroids and he blew up like a little balloon, and the seizures were so severe that he actually regressed into like a semi-fetal position. And I used to put him in a car seat every day, put him in a wagon, and walk him down to the Catholic school where there was a sanctuary where I was expelled because I was out of control. That's all I knew. That's all I knew. All I knew how to do was pray the rosary every day for him. Every 7 days, I would light a 7-day candle and put it on the altar at the Catholic Church. I would take film canisters, full, empty film canisters. They don't have that stuff no more. I would take those film canisters and I would fill them with holy water and anoint him daily. And the seizures stopped. I took him to see Dr. Richard Koch, the most renowned doctor in neurosurgery for mentally retarded children. And the doctor says, that ain't going to work. The seizure stopped. Done. Gone. That's all I knew. And remember that. All I could remember to do was pray. Nick got older. Life went on. And I really enjoyed what I was doing, so I decided it was about time that I gave up working around trucks and kind of separate myself from that lifestyle. All the while, I'm still smoking weed. I'm not doing too much acid now, but I'm still smoking weed and drinking a lot. Okay? And from time to time, when I had a bad hangover, I'd pop a few amphetamines, but it was nothing near prior to his birth. I needed a career change. I decided to go back to school and get my degree in business administration, but I failed the math. I couldn't do the math. So I ended up in a class called criminal justice because it was easy for me. You took some social welfare classes. You took some 832 PC classes, and you could graduate. Okay, you didn't need a couple of psych classes. So I ended up going to work for the Los Angeles County Probation Department, and I began to work in youth camps, and I liked it. I was good. I had found my niche. Now, I was not making a six-figure income working for LA County, I'm telling you. I gave a lot up to take that path in life. Soon after that, as people with flesh, I got greedy. There were jobs at the state, so I went to work for the state of California as a correctional officer, because that's how you get in, you enter in that phase. And man, I got inside there, and man, I was feeling good. I had gotten healthy. I was still drinking a lot and occasionally smoking weed because you got tested to become a peace officer. But I was ready to give all that up because I wanted this job with the state. So I became a correctional officer and got transferred to the California Youth Authority, where I started sitting in as a guard, okay, and worked my way up through the ranks in about a 5-year period to a parole agent 3. These are good jobs, steady jobs, no layoffs, full medical benefits, the whole 9 yards. And I was good at that. I was so good that I got to go up twice, once as a nominee and once as the recipient of Correctional Peace Officer of the Year. I got to sit at the table with Gray Davis. No big deal, just Gray Davis, okay? I'm sure if you got to have the lunch with the governor of California now, it probably wouldn't be no big deal. You'd probably want to come down here and eat. Okay? Amen. Yeah. That career was so good to me, but I got caught up. I got caught up in management. I got caught up in being one of these kind of guys that, was invincible. I was led by the wrong people. I was led into a business that if you complained or yacked or couldn't hang, you were a punk. You don't belong in this business if that's all you can do. And I'm going to have to start hurrying it up, I can tell right now. So I blew that career. I worked myself from being at the top of my game to the bottom of my game, where they were opening cases against me, lying about me, had inmates filing paperwork against me that wasn't true. Okay, so anyways, it was my time to get out of there. I had the opportunity to take an early retirement, and I took it. I was depressed and downhearted. I took to cloud 9. Once again, I became a full-blown alcoholic. I developed a condition called trigeminal neuralgia, where the nerves in your brainstem short out. The only cure for that was morphine. Pain got worse, you took more morphine. Pain got worse, you drank and took more morphine. I already know how good it is when you can take pills and drink. I already know what that feels like. So I'm in. Depression. Some of you know I blew up to 425 pounds. 425 pounds. I was a mess. I was suicidal. What do you want from me? Tell him, bro. This lady walks up to my property. I have a beautiful home. This lady walks up to my property. My name is Karen Robertson. I'm from Lamb's Fellowship. We're going to build a church next to your house. Her. Me. Get off my effing property. That's where I was. All 425 pounds. I was drunk. I remember the day that it happened. I was smashed. So while they're building the church, I get the bright idea, I'm going to go over and start partying with the guys that are building the church. It's right next door. There's no wall or anything there yet. So I'm sitting on the wall drinking and smoking weed and falling off the wall with these people. Not the people that were building the church, the construction workers, obviously. Okay? Well, as time went on, the church opened, and I was angry. I was there first. This is my yard. This is my house. And how dare they turn that music up like that? Who do they think they are? I'm Bro Newman. Tell them, bro. Tell them what you were like. One night there was a youth service going on over there. I went into the garage and got a 1x1 block of wood, put 4-inch drywall screws in it. It's about that long. And I went over to assault the pastor there. Drunk, high on morphine. I stumbled in the back door of the place, pushing over chairs, and it was a youth group. And man, they must have thought some monster just got cut loose in there. I'm pushing stuff over and dropping F-bombs, screaming at the top of my lungs like a flipping maniac. Thank you, Johnny. Okay. I went up to the edge of the stage and told this little guy, his name was Mike Wilson. He spoke here, little guy like this here. And I told that man, I said, if you don't turn down this effing music, I'm going to kill you. I'm frothing at the mouth, hair down to my shoulders, big old ugly beard, 425 pounds with a stick in my hand with drywall screws, threatening this guy to take him out if he didn't turn down the effing music. He leans over the stage and he says to me, I'm not afraid of you. Hello. O-S-H-I-T. Now what do I do? This guy's not afraid of me. I got to do something fast. I go out onto the floor and start throwing chairs around. I'm sure they're on the phone calling the cops. Some madman's in here tearing the place up. But I got out of there and I went home. And I went into the back garage and I remember overdosing on morphine and drinking myself into a near coma. And when I woke up some 12 hours later, I was sitting in a beach chair face down on a block wall with a 9mm with a slug in the chamber like this. Like this. I didn't pull the trigger, obviously. Something came over me to make me change my mind. About 4 months later, same thing happened. Only this time there was a regular church service going on. And John Hanson was at Centerpoint Church now, if you go to Centerpoint. It was Lamb's Fellowship back in them days. Marty Edwards founded that church. Good thing he did. He was up there giving a message, and he said, somebody just came in here, and I'm in the back of the sanctuary in the darkest corner, about 8 feet from the wall that I used to drink and use morphine and fell off of, about 8 feet from that wall. He said, somebody came in here tonight, and this is the second time you've been in here, and you come in here to hear what I'm saying. You've been compelled to come back in here and ask for forgiveness. I stayed for about 3/4 of that sermon and became so uncomfortable, I raced out. But I do remember I went home and went in the house. I didn't go into the back garage. I didn't take out a handgun, and I didn't use morphine that night. I did use morphine because I had to, but I didn't drink. About 8 months later, I go in a third time. I was angry again for a third time, and I went in there to tell them to turn. I was just going to politely tell. I'll try to be nice to them this time. I'll ask them to turn down the music. I'll ask them. So I go in and I sit in the seat right next to that wall where it was dark. No one could see me. They didn't know who I was. And a kid up there named Ryan Sharp got up and gave a message about redemption. And he said, now this is 7 months later, he said, somebody came in here for the third time tonight. Coincidence? No. Nope, not a coincidence. You know why you're here tonight. Because you want to be saved. The opportunity came around inside the sanctuary if you wanted to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. And I raised my hand. In one heartfelt swoop, this does not work for everybody, and I'll probably have to end because I'm not going to be able to but I'll get you through this portion. If you invite me back, I'd be honored to share the rest of the story with you. In one heartfelt swoop, it was over. Morphine addiction, pornography, alcoholism, junk food. That fast. Now that does not happen to everybody, and I'll be able to explain to you why. Okay? So here I am, I'm saved. I remember not kneeling on the floor, but laying next to that wall that I fell off of. Only this time I was sober. That Ryan Sharp's father came over, and another man, I don't recollect who it was. And they laid hands on me and prayed for me. And I told them, I said, I don't know what happened. I said, oh, we can tell you. Never again. I've never had another drink. I never used morphine again. I went to a doctor, and the doctor said, bro, he says, you can't stop doing that. He says, you can't be a brittle alcoholic and a morphine addict and just stop. He says, don't you know you could have a heart attack or go into cardiac arrest? I never did tell him, but I should have told him, don't you know I just had a blood transfusion? Don't you know that I've had a broken heart repaired? Whew. I do my best to explain to people. And I'm not a big Bible thumper, but I'm going to read you a passage that I think relates to me and relates to the story that I told you about Nick and what prayer does for you. When Jesus, this is from Mark 9. When Jesus came to the other disciples, they saw a large crowd around them and the teachers of the law arguing with them. As soon as the people saw Jesus, they were overwhelmed with wonder and ran to greet him. What are you arguing about? Jesus asked. The man in the crowd answered, Teacher, I brought you my son who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of his speech. Whenever it seizes him, he throws himself to the ground, he foams at the mouth, grinds his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirits, but they couldn't. Jesus said, You unbelieving generation, how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy to me. Bring the boy to me. And they brought him. When the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into a seizure. He fell to the ground and rolled around foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the boy, How long has he been like this? From childhood, the father answered. We've been told to throw him into a fire or water to kill him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us. Help us. If you can, Jesus said, everything is possible for one who believes. Immediately the boy's father exclaimed, I do believe. I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief. When Jesus saw the crowd running to the scene, he rebuked the impure spirit. You deaf and mute spirit, he said, I command you come out of him and never enter him again. The spirit shrieked, convulsed violently, and came out, and the boy looked so peaceful, many thought he was dead. But Jesus took him by the hand, lifted him to his feet, and stood up. After Jesus had gone indoors, his disciples asked him privately, Why couldn't we drive out that evil spirit? Jesus replied to his disciples, This kind can only come out by prayer. I want you to stop and think. I could only remember from Catholic school, so I prayed daily. I have a few more things to share with you, but I'm gonna cut you loose because unfortunately some of you work. Thank, thank you for the working bunch. Okay. Some things that I've written in the past. If you're interested in hearing them, hook up on Facebook. I love Facebook. It's a great tool as long as you don't get too crazy with politics or start spewing a bunch of garbage out there. It's a great tool to enjoy and have fun with people and share the good things that God does in your life. I don't really recollect where I found this. I think it was something that you put out. It might have came in the Black Sheep newsletter, but I felt compelled to let you know. This is where I am today. Thanks to groups like this right here, this men's ministry, Speakers Forum, Black Sheep Harley Davidsons for Christ, people that came along my side. That Karen Robertson lady, now that I think about her, God bless her. Her and my wife seen something in me that I did not think I had. I was gone. The Beatles. And here they are, the Beatles. Game changer. I am part of the fellowship of the unashamed. I have the Holy Spirit as my power. The die's been cast. I stepped over the line. The decision has been made. I am a disciple of Jesus Christ. I won't look back, let up, slow down, back away, or be still. My past is redeemed. My present makes sense, and my future is secure. I'm finished and done with low living, sight walking, small planning, smooth need, colorless dreams, tame visions, mundane talking, chintzy giving, and dwarfed goals. I no longer need a position, a promotion, or popularity. I don't need those things no more. I don't have to be right, first, tops, recognized, praised, regarded, or rewarded. I now live by the presence and learn by faith, love by patience, lift by prayer, and labor by power. My peace is set, my gate is fast, my goal is heaven. My road is narrow, my way is rough, my compassion's few, my guide is reliable, my mission is clear. I cannot be brought to compromise, deterred, lured away, turned back, deluded, or delayed. I will not flinch in the face of sacrifice, hesitate in the presence of adversity, negotiate at the table of the enemy, ponder in the pool of popularity. I won't give up, back up, let up, shut up until I've preached up, prayed up, prayed up, stored up, and stayed up for the cause of Christ. I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ. I must go until he returns, give until I drop, preach until all I know, and work until he comes. And when he comes to get his own, he will have no problem recognizing me. My colors will be clear, for I am not ashamed of the gospel, because it is the power of God for the salvation of everyone.